Welcome to Prestige Worldwide, the podcast, a weekly battle of wits, debating everything from horseshoes to hand grenades, all for the privilege to be called right. And now, your hosts, Bobo and Travis.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Prestige Worldwide, the podcast. I'm Bobo, with me as always is Travis.
Hey, guys.
How we living, buddy?
I'm good, man. How about you?
Oh, you know what? I'm feeling great because we got an easy week this week.
That is true. It does feel good for us.
Almost like a week off. I fucking love it.
It is. It is.
For those of you who don't understand what I'm referring to, last week's episode, we interviewed Dennis Jagard from 10 Foot Pole, and we got a very good response.
Yes.
And we only aired half the interview last week, so after this quick little intro, we're going to air the second half of the interview this week.
Right. So
that's all. So we got a couple voicemails, and we got to go through Fantasy Movie League, then we'll get right to the interview.
Right.
And we got time is of the essence. We're already running long, I know, in this episode because the interview's a little long. So
that's fine. I don't mind, and I'm sure our audience doesn't mind as well. But
judging from the response, they people seem to really like last week's episode. Even people that had no idea who Dennis Jagard was, who 10 Foot Pole was, our listeners seem to really enjoy it. I got a lot of positive feedback.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't mind having him on again. Because I like there are still questions that I have for him, and I know there are still stories out there that he has that I think people would really relate to.
I agree. I think once his touring and his album cycle dies down, maybe like in 6 months or so,
yeah,
we should invite him back and have some more story time with Dennis.
I'm okay with that because, like I said,
I think it'd be great.
Yeah. So, all right, you want to move into Fantasy Movie League?
Let's talk about Fantasy Movie League. I got a question for you, Travis.
Yes.
The fuck?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to play.
What? How?
What was that?
Okay, Travis, it was literally, this is the biggest week in the history of movies.
Yeah.
Ever. Literally.
Yep.
How did you forget to play?
I don't know. I need to, I really do need to set an alarm, and I know I've said this before. But
we've done this for 122 episodes now?
Sure.
We've been playing since before that started, you and I personally.
Right.
So you've known for the better part of 2.5 years.
And if anybody out there is listening for the first time or has jumped in here, we play Fantasy Movie League, and it's at fantasymovieleague.com. So if you'd like to know how this whole thing is played, you can go there and read the rules. But
it is basically fantasy sports for soccer moms, but we happen to play because we find it interesting and funny to talk about Fantasy Movie League.
Right, and this was also the fantasy sport that I could put the least amount of effort, and I even found a way this week to put even less amount of effort to it.
Yeah. Yes, so for those of you who play fantasy football, Travis forgot to set his lineup this week in Fantasy Movie League on the biggest week in movies in the history of movies. Travis somehow forgot. You know, he's been playing for 3 years with me now to set his lineup.
Yeah, I don't know, I goofed.
Wow. Wow.
I do feel like this may be the biggest box office total we've ever had.
It is. No, this is the biggest week in history of movies. That was not a lie. That's true.
So, yeah, I don't know. I thought about it. I think I thought about Thursday. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And then Friday night, I was like, oh, that's right. The Avengers comes out this weekend. Ah, shit.
Good job, buddy.
Yeah. So, listen, I apologize. This is not, the way I'd like to be represented, in our Fantasy Movie League. But, yeah, sorry, guys.
Also, so to recap, if you want to play with us, go to fantasymovieleague.com. The league is Prestige Worldwide, the podcast, and the password is Travis Bobo, all one word, all lowercase. TravisBobo.
Yep. And
come join us. We have a great time. It takes like a minute a week if you don't want to put a lot of effort into it. It's still a lot of fun. There's a lot of shit talking that goes on. We have a very active user base in the podcast that plays with us. And it's a lot of fun.
Well, let's listen to one of the voicemails, shall we?
Oh, we have a voicemail about it.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. They're both about it.
Hey, guys. It's family fun time again. I won, but that was a close call. Basically, everyone that played was within 4 or 5 million, excluding the bottom 2 or 3. Travis, I hope you were feeling okay or something, because you fucked up again, man. Get your shit together. All right, let's see how close this week goes.
Sorry, I forgot to play. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but yeah. I really do hope before he listens to this episode that he really does think that was my actual play. Like, I was like, you know what? I don't believe in Avengers. I don't believe the hype. It's not going to make any money. I'm going completely the opposite direction.
Leave it, and you're going with the heady 2-screen empty play.
Which always works out for people.
Always. Another voicemail?
Yeah, we do have another voicemail. Let's listen to this.
Yo, West Coast Pet Ant calling in. Random suggestion for the Fantasy Movie League. Institute the Ask Bobo prize, a trophy, for the winner of each quarter. Well, more, but there's just one trophy. Giant middle finger, says F Bobo. And then every quarter, add either engrave a name or get a name plaque of the winner of that quarter. And for every time that Bobo doesn't win, it's F Bobo. Every time Bobo wins, it's F the rest of us. Just saying, could be fun. Putting this out there before the winner of this quarter comes up. Just a thought.
Jesus Christ, can you talk any slower?
I don't know. What kind of budget do you think this podcast has?
What? So I heard about this offline. I'll tell you what, I'm in for this. I will buy the trophy myself out of my own funds. However, before we do this, I want to get to 20 players in the movie league.
Okay.
If we can get to 20 active participants in any 1 week of the movie league, I will buy a trophy and we'll do this.
I also think.
So, what do you think?
I think we should maybe start whoever wins the podcast, because it's not going to be either you or I. But whoever wins the movie league for the year or for the season, excuse me, we should probably send them something, and we'll send them we'll send them little random things. If they want to send us their address, we'll send them something, and we'll make it kind of fun for them.
Absolutely. But I will institute the trophy, a rotating trophy with an engraving plaque with your name on it, if we get to 20 people that play with us every week. So tell your friends, tell your people that are listening to the podcast now that like, oh, I don't want to participate. Well, fuck off. You need to, because it's going to be a lot of fun. And now we're upping the stakes.
Yeah. So
get him involved.
We do also need to point out that MC did message us this week, and he does not play the Fantasy Movie League. So Andrice, who also changed his name to Andrice, a.k.a. not MC.
I was going to take weekly guesses on who it might be now that it's not MC.
Right.
And I've already run out of ideas.
All right. Well, but we should also recap for everybody, because Family Fun Time did win yet again. And
good job.
Andy came in second, Tim third, Big Red fourth. You came in fifth. Derp to Derp came in sixth. Frank seventh. Andrice eighth, and myself came in ninth, which wasn't hard because I was the ninth person playing. But overall, we have Big Red leading with Derp to Derp in second. Andy's in third. Bobo is in fourth, a distant fourth.
Yes.
Family Fun Time is in fifth. Frank's in sixth, Tim's in seventh, Andres is in eighth, and I am in last. And
yeah, good job. No, it's not distant. I'm only 36 million behind first place. It can happen.
Sure.
I can still win. It's looking bleak. I've got 4 more weeks.
Yeah. And
I can do it.
And who knows? Maybe somebody else will start fucking up and not playing. I hope not. But, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, they're not. They're going to all play it. We're going to get all their friends to play so we can have a trophy. We need 20 people, all right? We're going to get there.
All right. Okay.
We're going to do it together. That's all. We don't have a lot of time to discuss it more. We'll talk about it next week in more detail. But I'm throwing the gauntlet down, all right? Get your friends involved. Everyone sign up. We're going to have a great fucking time. It is the league is Prestige Worldwide, the podcast, at fantasymovieleague.com. The password is Travis Bobo.
That's it.
That's it. So without much further ado, we'll get back to the interview for Dennis Jagard. One last time, Prestige Worldwide, the podcast, pwthepodcast.com. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, PW the Podcast. If you want to call and leave a voicemail about anything, it is 747 banging.
747-226-4464.
But before we get to Denny feedback. A listener texted me in with the best text I think I've ever gotten about this podcast. He said to me, and this is a real deep pull. He said, "Hey, I just listened to the episode of the podcast. I love it, but does Dennis realize who he sounds like?" And he sent me a picture of Mr. Van Driesen from Beavis and Butthead.
Right.
Who I went back, I didn't realize what Van Driesen sounded like till I went back and listened again to some clips from Beavis and Butthead. And oh my God. He asked me for legitimately, do you think this guy voiced him in real life? Like in the show?
Well, I mean, as soon as you sent you forwarded the message over, or we got the message, I knew exactly what he sounded like, and I was like, "Oh shit, that's good."
Sounds just like him, doesn't he?
Yep.
Do you want to play, for those of you who don't know your Beavis and Butthead that well? Let's play a quick sound clip for the listeners of what Mr. Van Driesen from the show sounded like.
Okay, here he is.
And here's a song that might help you cope with some of those feelings. Okay, it's called "Lesbian Seagull." She flies so gracefully over rocks.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty close.
And the best part is, though, much like Mr. Van Driesen, it's pretty clear from an interview that Denny is like such a genuine and nice dude.
Yes.
And so is Mr. Van Driesen in the show.
Right.
It's just funny how similar they are in voice and in personality.
That is true. Maybe
I wonder if he knows Mike Judge. We got to ask him.
There we go. Maybe for the next round, we'll ask him that question.
We should.
All right. You want to?
You got anything else?
I don't have anything else. Let's get to the interview.
All right, here you go. Part 2 of Denny feedback, the interview. What does your family think about? What does your wife think about the record? Have your kids listened to it? What are their thoughts?
Oh, that's a good question. So far, no one has dared to criticize me in the household.
Really? Your wife hasn't said, "Ooh, Denny."
They've had to live with this for so long that I guess my wife's biggest criticism has been that she's gotten to like the songs a certain way, and then when I took them in and worked with Ryan Green, our producer, he changed a lot of things, had different ideas. We added parts, we changed up like the feel of certain things, and so if she was used to the songs a certain way, there was a little bit of resistance there to it. But I think once she heard them, especially in the context of the final mixes, it's pretty obvious that the end result was pretty good.
And how about your kids? Have you let them listen to it at all?
Pardon me?
Have your kids listened to it at all? What do your kids think?
I don't think they haven't really listened to the new record much. They've heard these songs so much that I think they're kind of, it just kind of goes over their heads. There was one time I did a local acoustic show and both my kids showed up and my younger one was singing along the whole time. So I didn't think that he ever listened to me, but when he was in that context, it became obvious that he knew all the words. So,
it's very sweet.
I try not to bug him about it too much. I do, my older kid does the website, like I said, and
so
I harass him on a regular basis, just asking him to do technical things for me. Like he does, he just makes HTML documents and then I put them on.
Right.
And,
okay. So he's more in tune with everything though that's going on with the band and stuff.
He's what?
He's more in tune with what's going on with the band and everything then.
I don't know if he pays attention really to what's going on with the band. I tried to get the kids, trying to get this music in front of people. My feeling about Escalating Quickly is that the music especially is really entertaining, fun, interesting, and something that people, not just punk people, but people in general would enjoy. So my feeling is that if we just get people to give it a listen, it could really grow on people. So I asked my kids to try to think of ways that we could market it in new places, like to play it, like, because they're always playing video games. So I was like, are there chat rooms? Like, is there background music playing when you're playing these video games? Like, how can we get all these gamer kids to give these songs a chance? And my kids wanted nothing to do with that.
They're like, "Dad, don't ruin Fortnite with 10-foot pole."
Well, yeah, I was kind of like, yeah, but what if you're like in an argument with a guy? Don't you want to be able to hit a button and have it say, "Don't be a dick, 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 dick"?
That's a great idea.
And they're just like,
how do we market that?
You need to come up with a 10-foot pole Fortnite dance.
Well,
That's it,
That's
Travis.
what I feel. I feel like that song is so useful. There's such a utility in that. Like, like for example, with hecklers, I don't get a lot of hecklers, fortunately, but there have been a couple, and it was so convenient. I noticed that if I played that song early, like in an acoustic show, and if people are noisy or annoying in some way, because I get the audience to sing the dick, 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 dick part, if someone's heckling me hard, I'm always really nice to him, and then I say, "Oh, come on, man, don't be a dick," and I'll start singing the song, and the whole audience will go, "Dick, dick, dick, dick," and that really stops a heckler right away, because generally hecklers want the audience to be with them against the person on stage.
Right.
But if the whole audience kind of turns to them and points and goes, "Dick, dick, dick, dick," it's kind of all over. It instantly ends the heckling. So that was kind of useful, but I feel like it could be used in so many different situations. Like my friend has a nightclub, and I was going to ask her about, maybe you could play this song and be like, well, this is our nightclub policy for creepy guys. Just don't be a dick. Like, you don't have to have a specific policy. Just don't be a jerk, and then play that song and get all the, college kids who go to her club to embrace the song.
And the song is all, and I noticed a lot of the songs, there seems to be a little more of like a danciness to them than in your past records. Was that a conscious decision to make them sound a little more dancey?
The songs that are released are more like that. Well, you heard Forever Road, right?
Yes. Well, that's
Forever Road's different. Like,
right.
Well, the world hasn't heard that yet. That's going to premiere May 1st on Brooklyn Vegan, and then I think May 2nd it's going to be released like to Spotify and all that stuff.
Okay.
But I guess it's a single, but it's not really a single. It's more like a metal song. But I showed the patrons those 3 songs first because people felt like "Don't Be a Dick" and "Everything Dies" were like the catchiest of the songs, but particularly for hardcore fans and some of our old fans who want to hear more like heavy music, it's kind of odd to lead with our 2 poppiest songs. So "Don't Be a Dick" and "Everything Dies" are both extremely poppy. And there's another song on the album called "Numb" that's almost like a dance song, even more so than these.
Good. But I'm excited for that.
Most of the rest of the record is more like, I would still call it alt rock. It has the punk roots and different vibes, and some of them are even the double time punk.
I mean, it definitely, like when I listen to the new songs, it definitely sounds like 10 Foot Pole. I mean, just because it has a little bit of different flavor to it, but every record has its own flavor and its own spin, even by long established bands that put out basically the same genre of music, every 2 years, like clockwork. I still felt like 10 Foot Pole to me. So if that's what you're going for, then I thought you hit the mark 100%.
Well, I did get a little sad because I read some reviews the other day, and it was probably my fault because I probably shouldn't go on a site called Screaming Fast Hardcore and see how they liked the album when the only 2 songs released were these super poppy. Like, this is the poppiest 10 Foot Pole's ever been. I mean, I guess we've had some pop stuff in the past that was like super sweet, but we wouldn't have released it first. And so, there were a few scathing reviews, and so I was feeling a little bit vulnerable about it. But then I kind of felt like as soon as people hear songs like Forever Road, it'll be like, oh, okay, there's still a whole spectrum of from pop to metal to kind of 80s sounding stuff to we also have an acoustic song on the record, so
you really span the gamut from everything from the old fans to new. There's something in between for everybody.
Yeah, it's a variety. I wanted the record to sound interesting and fun, and to me, I won't name names, but there's some bands in our genre that just seems like the same song kind of regurgitated in a slightly different way, and especially, I mean, we've done, I think, 9 records, or this might be our 10th record, or my 10th record as a songwriter, if you include Scared Straight and the old stuff. I didn't want to just do another thing that was the same old, even genre. I wanted to just kind of escape from that and have fun.
Well, yeah.
And this is what we end up with. And
it's
so
all,
it's
and it's all on, like you said,
too.
You're funding it yourself. It's on your own dime. You should do whatever the fuck you want to do. If you want to fucking play dance songs, play dance songs. You want to play a metal song? Play a metal song. You should be able to do whatever you want. I mean, really, at this point in your age, you've paid your dues as far as the industry is concerned. You should write the record that you want to be proud of and you want to listen to.
Yeah, but I still feel vulnerable when I read bad reviews. It's like, there's also reviews about ex members, like how many, like who, like, well, why isn't this guy in the band? Why isn't that guy in the band? Is it still the same band? And the reality is that we don't make enough money to keep people doing it all the time. Like, because just like me, other people have different opportunities. The main difference is at this point, it's my band, so I kind of made the band work around my opportunities, but I couldn't do that for 4 or 5 people, and people just, especially if there's not money there, people just get bored and want to do something different or get better opportunities. So over the years, we've had just tons of different members, but all the while, like since 1983, I've been playing guitar and writing songs. Since 1995, I think, I've been singing. And so it's still just me singing my songs and trying to hoping people like it. But yeah, there's different people who are like, a band is this is my definition of a band, 4 guys who grew up together and went to the same preschool and
and have been the same band for the whole time. Not one member's ever changed. And if you get rid of one member, it's not the same band.
It's Van Halen, not Van Hagar.
Well, yeah, actually, when you use that as an example, then I do really feel awful. But I like to think of it more like Pink Floyd, where after Syd Barrett, there still was some pretty good songs made, or even like AC/DC, where it's different with a different singer, but it's still it's different, but it just can move on. It's not like I'm destroying the old recordings as we go. You can always go back and enjoy that, but I want to make something interesting and new, and it could be with different people, it could be with the same people, and let's just have fun with it and see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like at this point, and this happens to a lot of bands as they get older, members move on because, again, people grow up, they phase out of music. That happens. Really, at this point, 10 Foot Pole is Dennis Jagard's band. It's not a band of 4 equally, comprised musicians that all have input at this point. It's it's a couple people, but some people just don't understand how that process works, and some bands evolve when they become, like one person's basically the band now because everyone else has moved on. They've grown up and gotten a real job and decided they don't want to play music anymore, or for whatever reason, splintered off and done something else. That's pretty common with a lot of.
Also, because the business structure, I think this is appropriate for your podcast. This is kind of wider than the band, but if you think about a band, basically the typical definition of a band as a partnership is essentially socialism. It's essentially a group of guys who are supposed to all give equally to this common goal.
Right.
Right.
But the reality is, now I'm pretty far left, but the reality is that model doesn't work well. Like the model of just expecting everyone to contribute equally does not work well.
Right.
Maybe in a family it does, but even in a family, there's usually like one person who's kind of the leader. And so the band has shifted over the years into, instead of being an equal partnership, it basically is my business, and I take all responsibility for it, but I also take all the risks.
Right.
So when we play, I guarantee that the other guys are going to make a certain amount of money, and it's just enough to kind of keep them there, and maybe it isn't enough to keep them there, but it's kind of the best I can do given what we're kind of worth in different markets. And whether or not this is a smart business strategy for me hasn't been fully determined yet. But one thing I will say is that it's greatly reduced the stress and the emotional roller coasters of trying to be in a partnership, because when you're trying to be equal, people are always giving each other guilt trips. There's always resentment. Yeah. There's always 1 or 2 people who do all the work, and they resent the people who aren't doing all the work. And then the people who aren't doing the work resent that they're being constantly nagged by the people doing all the work. And it creates a kind of a terrible environment for longevity.
It ends up imploding a lot of bands. I'm having like flashbacks when I was the dad in my band, as Travis knows very well. There were 4 guys in my band that didn't do a lot of work, and then there was Bobo who did a lot of the work, and eventually resentment builds and things happen, and next thing you know, there it goes.
Yeah, anybody who's ever been in a band and ever, for whatever period of time, what you just described, that either brings back haunting memories, or it in some ways it rings true. And usually it's the drummer,
or regrets of I should have done more.
Right,
a lot of this more people. Yeah.
Usually it's the goddamn drummer sitting at the bar while we're all loading the van.
That's great.
Well,
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I can't say it's usually the drummer. I had a drummer. It's funny that you guys are out in Pennsylvania. Kevin Ruggeri, probably some people in the audience might know him, was a school teacher out of I just forgot the name of his little town.
It's out near Philadelphia, isn't it?
Westchester? It's out by King of Prussia, Westchester.
Yep, Westchester.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, we know that.
Well, Kevin Ruggeri was the only band member I could think of who just worked his ass off. He was a school teacher out in from Westchester. I can't remember if that's where he taught, but he auditioned for the band, moved out to California, was in the band. He did Bad Mother Trucker and Subliminal Messages. And he was amazing. It was, in fact, I would have quit the band around the time of Bad Mother Trucker if it wasn't for Kevin kind of being someone else in the band working hard that kind of gave me hope, because the other band members at the time just kind of ruined my whole faith in the system. and so that's when the transition kind of happened, when essentially I bought out the other guitar player and moved on after a lot of different conflicts with him. And it was having Kevin in the band that kind of gave me hope, because he worked really hard and helped. And suddenly I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only person who was like kind of the responsible member working hard. And so then we made Subliminal Messages, and then punk rock just had a rough time, and we ended up bailing anyway, or at least taking a huge break. And he's back in Pennsylvania now, teaching again. And he's got a family, and I hope he's happy.
You think he still plays drums? Call him up, come play on the
store?
Yeah,
he does. I see different projects he does, but now he's back to being a professional school teacher. So
right. Yeah.
I even thought about becoming a teacher, because one cool thing about it would be that you have summers off.
Yeah, it's frustrating when you, like, I'm married to a school teacher, and when they're off for 2 months and you have to go to work every day, that resentment builds as well.
Yeah, I don't know that my fragile ego can handle that.
It's frustrating, especially me being a musician and being in a band for so long. That lifestyle would appeal to me,
right?
And yet she gets to live it now, and I have to watch her live it. That sucks.
I like the idea. Well, I do enjoy. I'm a bit of a ham. I like being in front of an audience, so I like the idea of having a class, and I also like the idea of being able to influence people. I don't know if I know a lot of teachers in my life had an influence on me. At least in showing me different perspectives but also being an example of how you can live your life and what kind of a person you can be, and what, like, different approaches to life, like not so much what they said as what they did and the kind of examples that they set. And so I think that would be kind of a neat thing to do. Like, I wouldn't mind doing that if it was easy to get into, but then I'd know I'd have the 3 months off, and then I could do the band on the 3 months and actually plan on it. Whereas as a sound engineer, I don't know anything. Like, I thought I had this year all planned out, and then after I made a bunch of moves and made a bunch of commitments, it all fell through. And I'm trying to figure it out still.
I mean, I think you're doing a pretty good job. I think most of the tour dates are filled. You've got a pretty good tour booked. I mean, I really hope the record is a success. I'm excited for the summer. I'm going to try to, since you don't come out to the East Coast yet, that's okay.
Right.
I'm going to come out to the West Coast and catch a show at some point. So,
oh, nice.
I'm probably going to come out.
We're actually submitting to other tours. I can't say who, because we haven't gotten it. It wouldn't be responsible for me to say.
Do they rhyme
I'm trying
with
to get
ag
tours
wagon?
Like in September-ish, where we do hit like the South and the East Coast, but our profile is not big enough to really just do it on our own right now. I think we need to open for somebody else and be part of a package.
And that's the best way to.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, if you're trying to build a new fan base, also the best way is to be on a package with a bigger band that you can draw from their fans, rather than try to headline smaller shows.
Yeah, there's ups and downs. The cool thing about being a support act is there's a lot less pressure on you, and you get to play to a different crowd. Maybe you'll make some new fans. The cool thing about being a headliner is that a 10-foot pole show is just different than the average show. I don't know if it's just my imagination, but I don't think so. I've heard from a lot of people that there really is kind of a general vibe of kindness. And I think it has to do with songs like Don't Be a Dick, where we've projected out to the world like we're not a tough guy band. We're not macho. We're just normal people, and we are respectful to other people, and we appreciate people, and we're compassionate. And you could feel that in our crowds. And so at a headlining show, because at a headlining show, it's our crowd.
Right.
Even if it's only a small crowd, it's in some ways more fun because the people know the words, they're nice to each other, and you get this kind of, I don't want to get too corny, but I really do feel like there's a feeling of kind of compassion and altruism and people who want to be part of a community and share that kind of that vibe. I want to say love, but I don't want to say love because it just sounds cheesy. But there really is like kind of a
Woodstock
warm
all
feeling.
over again.
And the funny part about it is, as you're describing that, and that makes sense to me from the music that I've heard. But as you're describing that, I'm like, oh, that's why they're starting off their touring in Canada.
Well, there are some tough crowds in Canada, like Winnipeg and whatnot. But the reason we play so much in Canada is that in the 90s the band was pretty big there, and so there's just more people who remember us, and so we still can go back there and play in little towns, and there's a group of people who have a memory of us, hopefully a fond memory of the songs at least, and so it's kind of playing to our strengths to be able to go to a place where we're more likely to draw a crowd just based on our name. Music is so tough. Like, just somebody's, there could be, like, say any given town, there's 400 people who love our band. But of those 400 people, how many people know about the show? How many people still even go out to shows? How many people are available that night, have a babysitter, don't have to work?
Right.
And so that number can dwindle rapidly.
Yeah.
So the math is just tricky.
And it's hard to count on it. You know what I mean? You got to figure doing the math right can be making or breaking the expenses and the budget for the tour.
Well, and that's where you go. If you go to a place like Quebec, like that, the average people in the 90s knew our band name pretty well. Whereas, if you go to El Paso, Texas, the average people in the town had no idea who we were. The average punk people might have known, but in Quebec, the average people knew who we were.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting, because I guess
So
like
it's a
when you're a
numbers
fan
game.
of a band, you never realize where other people are fans, kind of, especially back in the 90s when we didn't have Facebook yet and like MySpace and stuff to like really talk with people from other areas. So I would have no idea as a fan that you were big in Quebec. It's not something that was ever on our radar. So I had no idea that you were big there.
How big did you get in Canada?
I didn't know about it either. Well, I don't know. I'll use Not Us. I'll use NoFX as an example. When 10 Foot Pole did a tour with Face to Face and NoFX, and the average U.S. show, I think, was probably maybe 900 people, 1,000 people at the most.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I remember we didn't play New Orleans because Fat Mike was like, New Orleans just sucks. We never do good here. And so we played a little show with Face to Face on our own. It was just a little show. I think we also played a side show in New Jersey with Face to Face. And NoFX was just like, no, we're not going to do it. Now, when we went to Quebec City, 3,000 people.
Oh,
wow.
Going nuts. Like, we looked out in the crowd and like 3,000 people, massive pits. Like, so I would say that at that time, for any given city, it was 3 times as big in Quebec as in any U.S. city.
Wow.
That's crazy. I never would have guessed that in a million years.
And we should mention, you do have an upcoming tour starting at the end of May 24th. And that's
May 24th, yeah.
That's starting in California and going up to Canada. So for all of our Canadian listeners, make sure you catch a show.
Or West Coast listeners.
Yeah, we
have
have a few kind of warm up shows in Southern California, and we hit Punk Rock Bowling at the end of Punk Rock Bowling. We have a nice show, and then we swing through like kind of Denver, Omaha, Chicago, St. Louis, and then we do a whole bunch of shows. Not all at once, but we do a bunch of shows in Quebec, and swing through a little bit of Ontario. We take some breaks and come back because it's based on festivals, and I can't announce which festivals because they're not all announced yet.
Okay.
But we basically, in the rest of the world, we're not big enough to get pulled into some big festivals. But in Quebec, for example, I think June 29th in Trois-Rivières, we're playing right before Millencolin at a festival where there should be thousands and thousands of people. So
nice.
A big festival.
That's going to be awesome.
So I'm nervous about that, but excited.
It's good to be nervous.
There's
it's
a lot
good
of
to feel
guitar
something.
solos on the new songs.
You got to get
There's
those
a lot of
back,
practicing
buddy.
we got to do.
Dennis,
Luckily, I'm not the lead.
I'm kind of curious. You mentioned before about how, you read the reviews of the albums, and I'm assuming that's not a new thing. You've probably always read your reviews. Does that affect you? Like, does that?
Yeah, I try not to. I try not to read reviews. I try not to watch videos. I'm a perfectionist.
Okay.
So it's difficult for me to, take that criticism. I want to engage. The biggest sore spot for me, I don't know if you know the history of the band, but our original drummer became the singer of Scared Straight, and he was a baseball player, and we basically kicked him out of the band because he was a full-time Major League Baseball player and couldn't really tour at all. Like, we wanted to tour at least three weeks a year, and he couldn't do it.
Right.
And for better or for worse, in hindsight, probably the band would have got a lot bigger if we had just stayed as we were. But we kicked him out and decided we wanted to do our own thing. And eventually I became the singer. That wasn't the original plan, but when I started thinking about how much risk we took by bringing in other people, I decided I wanted to try to do it, because also I was the principal songwriter.
Right.
But over the years, especially back then, but over the years, there's always a little crowd that kind of trolls us and is like, oh, Radinsky was better. And like kind of the legend of Scott Radinsky.
Do you still get that?
And when that happened, we arranged with Epitaph to sign his new band, whatever it was going to be called. And that eventually became Pulley. Like, we originally offered to Scott, hey, we'll be your backup band. Like, we still want to play music with you. We want to keep going as 10-Foot Pole, even while you're playing baseball.
Right.
But he didn't take it well at first, so he asked us not to be his band. But we had already arranged with Epitaph that he would be on Epitaph, and we had already kind of planned that all out, and so that's what became Pulley. And so over the years, there's always been like a group of people that have given me a hard time about, Radinsky sounded better, Radinsky was better, you guys haven't made a good record since Rev,
I mean, and now the funny part is you guys, basically got rid of Scott because you wanted to be a full-time touring band. He's a professional baseball player, so he can't tour because baseball takes the whole goddamn year to play.
Right.
But now that he's in Pulley also has been a band for 20 plus years now, and they just put out a record, last year also? Or 2 years ago? It's just
I'm not sure. I think they have an EP that's fairly recent.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I think
the one
he's
that's
actually available now, so he's doing more work.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like I kind of feel like, the world's big enough for several bands. Like, you don't necessarily have to always compare one group to the other. Like, it doesn't really benefit us to compare. It's kind of like, it's just a different flavor of ice cream.
Right. Yeah, it's funny that you say that's because
there's always going to be trolls. Like, no matter what I do, there's always we did the album set list a couple years back, which was kind of a best of 10
fucking great, by the way. And we'll talk about that.
What was that?
I said we'll talk. That album is fucking great, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know,
and part of that was me redoing a bunch of the old songs, and part of that was so that when new people liked us at a show, I had something to give them, because people would come up at a show, like when we toured with Unwritten Law, and say, I had never heard of you before. What record should I get? And then I'd look at all these old records and say, well, if you like John, that's on the album Unleashed. If you like this song, it's on this album. And then I always had to explain, well, if you like this song, it's on this record, but it sounds different because it's a different guy singing who was a baseball player. And, it just got into this whole long story. And I wanted to be able to just hand him one thing and say, here's our past.
And it was kind of cool because you also could have just packaged a bunch of songs together and called it a best of and sold that. But you decided to make what I think is the right decision and re-record the songs in kind of like your own spin again. And release them as like a new thing.
Yeah. I wanted it to sound good, and I wanted it to be me singing on the songs. And I think all those songs I wrote, or, almost all of them, like Scott wrote a few of the lyrics on there, but not many. And so I wanted to be able to say, these are my songs.
Right.
It's me singing. This is it. So that when new people came up, I didn't have to have that whole, talk about the history and kind of like I earned those fans, so let me keep them and just have the glory. But the cool thing about Setlist also was that I wanted to kind of summarize the past, and that gave me the freedom to make a new record. Like Escalating Quickly, I could just let go of all of the expectations that we're a melodic punk band or whatever, and just make a great record and not worry about, is it fast enough? Is it tough enough? Like, I didn't want it to be like this long wait since Subliminal Messages, and then we come back with some weird new record that just surprised everyone. So we came back with Setlist to kind of reestablish that we're still the same band, but now we're going to make something different. And the something different was the Escalating Quickly.
So Setlist in that instance is kind of like the bow on the old 10-foot pole package that tied it all together. So now you're free to start a whole new box and put all new shit in it, whatever you want.
Yeah. I wanted that to be kind of a summary of the history so that a new person could come up, listen to that, and know where we came from.
Okay.
And if they want to go back and listen to the old records, it's great. It's not like we're deleting Rev, you know. We put some virus in the system and it just like destroys everyone's copies. It's not like we're getting rid of it. It's just, you know, we're moving forward, and that's one way for me to move forward is to kind of encapsulate the past, summarize it in a way that I also wanted people to hear, like, what do I sound like? Because comparing how I sound live to compared to how the recordings were is not really a fair comparison. So I wanted to have a nice, good presentation of me singing songs like Closer to Grey or Never Look Back or My Wall.
Right. Which
I wrote.
Which I thought was great. I loved it. I remember when the songs premiered, I think it was Brooklyn Vegan they first premiered on for Setlist, or at least where I saw them first on Setlist, and I was fucking excited.
Oh yeah, and we put a couple of new songs on there, like Scars and I Don't Want to Go.
Right. Which but Setlist is great. So if you for our listeners, if they like, you know, Don't Be a Dick and they're interested in hearing more about 10-Foot Pole, Setlist is probably the next best place to go because you kind of get like their best of, but they're re-recorded, so it's a modern sound, you know, and it's the band as they are now, not like recordings from 20 years ago. You can hear what their own spin on it now, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and we have an acoustic version of Old Man, which is kind of one of our more popular old songs. And I liked doing the acoustic thing because one of my favorite things now is to perform acoustically. I really love like just a vocal and a guitar and being able to go anywhere with or without a band and just sing and play. And so that's also kind of one of my goals. That's another reason I got the tour van, was so that I could do acoustic tours and not and basically be able to just go out by myself and have a place to sleep.
Well, and we should also mention, you kind of mentioned, well, you said something about it earlier, but when you're out on tour with other bands, you typically take your lunch break and you go out and play outside of the venues?
Yeah, depending how much the artist supports it. Like when I was on the Weird Al tour, they didn't want me to play to their audience, so I didn't harass their audience. I only played on, like completely far away from the area or on days off. But on the Jimmy Eat World tours, they didn't mind so much. So a lot of times there'd be people standing outside just waiting to get in.
Right. And
I found that if I went outside and I introduced myself, if I just went outside and sang, there wasn't as good a reaction because it's kind of like, oh, who's this creepy guy punishing us? But if I actually went to the front of the line of the people who love the music the most and I said, hi, I'm Denny. I'm the sound engineer for tonight. Is it okay if I play a couple of songs? You know, from my band from the 90s, you know, people would usually be like, oh, all right, let's see what you got. And once I started playing like Don't Be a Dick and Numb and Everything Dies, you haven't heard Everything Dies yet, but it also has a chorus where people can instantly kind of get it and sing along.
So we can put
seriously,
that one
like 80% of the people would be singing along, like not knowing the band, not knowing me, but just having a good time and singing.
We can, Danny, we can put that song on the end of the podcast. People that want to listen to that one too. So they can kind of get that song that way. I think that's also, it's kind of dancier, but it's also faster, more upbeat. I mean, that's also, I really like that song too. That was the other one that one in Don't Be a Dick was the one I wanted to put in the podcast, but we can put it at the end so people can listen to it as well.
Yeah, sure. I didn't even think Everything Dies would make it to the record. It was just a silly thing. Like, it was just like the most depressing lyric I could imagine, but then put to kind of a happy tune. And it was, when I was writing it, I was thinking of the movie, was it Juno with Ellen Page?
Oh yeah.
It had this really eclectic music, and I thought, this is the kind of song that would be on there, just something just totally silly and goofy, but I'm going to do it anyway, because when I'm songwriting, I try not to censor myself. The idea is just like take an idea and just make it into a song, and then maybe it's terrible and we throw it away, but not like criticize it yet. Just do it.
Right, give it a chance.
That was one of those songs where I was just like super depressing lyric, and then but sounding fun and poppy and just having a good time with it. And it ended up being, I think, you know, one of the strongest songs on the record. that's a lot of people liked it, and that's why we put it out as one of the first tunes to release to people.
I think it's one of the best. I love that song. I think that song is good. I mean, I'm very excited to hear the rest of the record. I'm pumped.
Yeah, me too.
So I can't wait to catch you guys. I mean, I don't know the last time I saw 10 Foot Pole as a full band play. I mean, ooh, God. It's been a long time. I think it was definitely on supporting Bad Mother Trucker. So it's been a while.
Yeah,
for me.
it probably wasn't the last time we were there, because the last time we were there, the show literally was not promoted at all. like people walked by and looked in and came in and said like, "Oh my God, you're 10 Foot Pole. You're playing here tonight." You know, and like no one knew. It was brutal. I think Kevin Ruggeri was the only one who came.
I mean,
so you weren't there.
Yeah,
but,
probably not.
That's part of the trick of being a band like us is like just the promotion, and how do you even get the word out, and how do you get people going is a brutal thing.
Do you find
that's why we're not touring the East Coast on our own?
Okay.
Yet. Unless maybe, if one of these songs becomes a hit, who knows? Maybe we'll be playing at the arena.
We'll do what we can. All right?
We'll do our part.
We'll get it out there. I mean, I would love nothing more for the 10 Foot Pole to be popular and come to the East Coast every 3 months like clockwork. I've been trying to do that for 20 years, all right? But all my friends are like, you still listen to skate punk and you're in your 30s? And I'm like, fuck you, but what do you want me to do, all right?
Well, going back to the acoustic idea, like part of my goal was like just make the greatest record we could and try to get it out to as many people as we can, because what my retirement goal is to kind of be a Johnny Cash meets Henry Rollins, cruising around with an acoustic guitar and just playing in little places and telling stories. So the acoustic shows, I tell stories a lot. And so that was part of the idea, was like, if I can just make this record get out to enough people and build some fans, they probably would come and see the acoustic version too.
Oh, absolutely.
So when I'm too old to be a sound engineer, I can still cruise around in my van, because my van has a diesel engine, so it's supposed to just go forever, and just cruise around in my van, play songs, tell stories.
Are you ever too old to be a sound engineer? I mean, come on.
What?
Yeah, that's well played.
God damn it! I walked right into that one.
I love it. I really love being a sound engineer, and hope if anybody out there has a major act with a real budget, I'm the kind of guy that you would call that. I'm the kind of guy that Weird Al Yankovic or Prince or Jimmy Eat World would be comfortable letting mix the show, because they get so many good comments from their fans that it sounded great.
Is Weird Al
keeps
as
me
nice?
in their good graces.
Is Weird Al as nice a guy as he seems in his songs in person? Is he like really?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, he's very nice, but he's very introverted. So, especially as someone who works for him, I always am careful, because you never know, you don't want to upset somebody. But all of our interactions, he's incredibly intelligent. He's basically a genius, and he's very introverted. There was a time we went to. We were staying at a hotel. It was right next to In-N-Out, and I went over to In-N-Out and I saw him, but I was afraid to go up and talk to him, and I didn't want to get in his face, in his space on his day off, and he didn't come over and talk to me. But every time that we've talked to each other, he's been super, super kind and gracious and nice. He knows exactly what he wants, so he can be tough to work for, because if you're not performing well, he will not let you slide on it. He's a perfectionist. He wants it to be great. But the good thing is that I'm great. If I say so myself. Like as a sound engineer. In fact, that was one of his things. Like after the first show or two of a tour, he listens to the recording and he gives you notes. And like for every single song, he gives notes.
Oh, wow.
Like every single song. And on the second day of tour, he came up to me and he said, "You did everything that I asked for. Like you take notes, you take direction remarkably well." And that was like the biggest compliment he could give. He didn't say it sounded great, because he doesn't know how it sounded in the house. Like the artist doesn't really know how it sounded other than hearing a review from people.
Right.
But he knew that in the recording, everything he told me to do, I did. Like if he told me you got to turn up the accordion on this part, I turned up the accordion on that part. If he told me I want more of this kind of effect, or I want this special thing to happen, I nailed it. And really, like I'm extremely critical of myself as well. And I think we did 77 shows on that tour, and every show was recorded live.
Which tour was that?
There's a lot of pressure. Well, the most recent tour was, what was it called? The Ill-Advised Vanity Tour.
So I could have talked to you at that show because I was at one of them. God damn it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was basically his not hits.
Right.
He played, it was like Weird Al Unmasked.
Which is
no
some of my
video
favorite Weird Al
wall,
songs.
no crazy wardrobe changes, no jokes in between. It was just the band stripped down and playing different songs every day. They had a whole bunch of different songs. I can't remember exactly. It was like 50 songs
they
to
have
choose from.
Yeah.
And then they played a different cover every night. And they would rehearse the cover the day before. So that's all they had. That's all I had to get the mix down too.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool
one day
tour.
of rehearsal, and then that sound check they would rehearse it again and then play it live that night.
Yeah, I mean, his band is incredibly talented. I mean, they've been playing different genres and learning all those things that Weird Al wants to do for so many years now. His band is incredibly versatile and talented. It's pretty impressive. So, I mean, I've been a big Weird Al fan.
And at the end of the tour, I got an email that said, it just said "great job" in capital letters and exclamation points, and that was really nice. And unfortunately, I'm not working with him this year, and it's because it's an orchestra tour, and I was offered the job, but I felt that they should have an orchestra specialist handle the orchestra, and there wasn't a budget to have both me and the orchestra specialist. So, part of me regrets that because I would have liked to have been out with him, but I also didn't want to kind of misrepresent, what I could do or would do. I felt like there needed to be a team of people to do it properly, or at least someone who was really, really good at orchestra mixing, because it's a different orchestra every day.
Right.
And they're big shows.
Right.
And so I felt that, I felt that I couldn't keep up the level of quality that he deserved if it was just me, flying by the seat of my pants every day. So
I got to tell you,
I'm sad to not have it.
I got to tell you, Denny, I'm real impressed with, with you saying that, because, it really shows your lack of ego that you can, be honest with people and say, maybe you do have some shortcomings when it comes to, mixing orchestras or something like that, not a lot of people have experience with. And you've really left some money on the table, by where other people would just say, yeah, I can do it.
If I end up homeless, it's probably was the bad choice.
Right.
Yeah. I told you can come stay in my attic. It's fine. What kind of dogs do you have?
It's similar with Prince. Like when Prince, so I worked with Prince at the Super Bowl time, and then right near after that was when things started to fall apart. And basically, when I walked away from the Prince gig, the sound engineer who did the Prince gig after me, there was a big London run, and after that run, Michael Jackson had a big London run lined up, and the guy who did sound for Prince got the Michael Jackson gig. And it's possible that if I wouldn't have walked away from that gig, I could have been on the Michael Jackson one. And of course that was a big tragic thing, that Michael Jackson passed away. And so the run didn't happen, but the insurance for all that actually paid the guys as if the whole run happened.
Oh,
so
shit.
Basically I basically could have bought a house with that money if I had gotten the Michael Jackson gig.
God damn.
Let's put it that way.
Wow.
Certainly a house in Idaho, not a house in LA, but a house in Idaho. I could have bought the whole house with that. But I walked away from that gig because I didn't want Prince to be disappointed in me. And maybe I was too hard on myself, but I felt like I'd rather have him be mad at me for walking than mad at me for wrecking a show. And I always thought I was going to get the gig again, because a lot of times he'd kick people out of his band, but a few years later he'd call them back. So that's why I carried around that list of notes with me, is like, I just figured, okay, sooner or later I'm going to get the call. And like I said, I did get the call at the Academy Awards show, but
right.
But when he passed, it was kind of like, I felt like we left something, undone. Like I always thought he was going to be back in my life and that I was going to be back on that gig. I always thought, I'm still Prince's guy. There's very few people that he hasn't fired. So I wasn't fired from the gig. I was on a really short list of people he could call. And so, it was unfortunate from professionally, but of course also more importantly, emotionally, just because I thought, we were going to be back to the team together. There was one time when he goes, sound man in a white suit, because he made me wear a white suit and dress up like John Travolta for a while. So what? And the security guards were telling me that he was punking me, but at the end of the day, like, he also came up to me one time and he was wearing a white suit and he just looked at me and he goes like, yeah, we're wearing matching suits.
So wait, how does that come about? Is like one day he walks up to you and he's like, hey, what's your measurements? And the next day he shows up with a white suit, or does he make you go out and buy your own white suit? How does that work?
Yeah, the latter.
Yeah.
That was not the weirdest thing he ever asked me to do. It was just, he just, at one point he just goes, Denny, I want you to wear a white suit with a black shirt, just like John Travolta. And I knew exactly what he meant.
He actually said like John Travolta?
I didn't go out and buy one white suit. I went out and bought two because, you have to have a spare in case I spilled coffee on it or something. So I still have two white suits that I've only worn at Halloween and Prince concerts.
That's awesome.
You go as Princess Soundman for Halloween. Or John Travolta. Either way. Right?
Yeah, it was more the John Travolta thing. I also had a wig and I put the wig like in my chest area. So I was kind of like going for the disco vibe. But
my God.
Yeah, I mean, but that was the kind of thing he would say. Like, he would just come up with something. Like, he said all kinds of stuff. Like, Denny, I want you to start a sound company. It's going to be NPG Sound, and it's going to be. And I don't want to pay these other sound companies to do it anymore. I want you to have our sound company, and like, he'd come up with all kinds of different things. Like, Denny, I want to put the keyboardist out next to you tonight. In the house. Like, so there were a lot of different
was that like in Time Out because he said something he didn't like, or wow, that's it's kind of, and I see what you mean emotionally, like moving on from that, because now it's like an unfinished chapter in a book.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I came back to that, as I felt like that really did hit me as an impact. I mean, I didn't know him well personally. I worked with him for about a year and a half, but I always felt like we were a team and that it was going to come back.
Right.
It was always felt like I carried around my equipment that in case I got a call, I would just pack up and go. Cause I got calls like that. Like, Denny, get on the next flight to Milan. Buy a guitar tuner and a Digitech whammy pedal and some candles. Because sometimes it was just me and him at a gig. Like he would show up and play acoustic guitar at a gig, and I'd meet him and maybe go to Guitar Center, and I'd go early to the gig and light some candles and make sure it smelled good and looked good and have the guitar. I was his guitar tech sometimes too. I tuned his guitar before he went on a few different TV specials and things. Like when I wasn't mixing because they had a TV engineer mixing. Right. A lot of times I was on stage tuning up that guitar.
Wow. Now, what musician would you like all time to be a front of house mixer for? If you could have your pick of any band in the world out there right now, like what band would you want to be out there doing the gig for?
Oh, that's a good question. The funny thing is, when I worked for Prince, Jimmy Eat World was that band.
Okay.
There was a keyboard tech for Prince that when I asked him, what he did and whatnot, he goes, "Oh, I usually do monitors for this band, Jimmy Eat World." And I was like, "What?" And I was envious of him the whole time because the Prince gig was a lot of pressure.
Right.
And I just thought, wow, that would be so fun to just be playing like small shows where you're not likely to get fired that day. And it's like cool music. And that's kind of what led to me working with AFI. I worked with Rise Against on a tour where their monitor guy hurt his back, and I just jumped in and covered for him for a while. But I don't know. It's hard to say like the most cool thing because I don't know artists well enough to know like how the vibe would be. I love artists who have very high expectations and who know what they want and who are great and who appreciate what I do. Like, it's not fun to work for somebody who doesn't really care. Like, you're replaceable.
Right. Yeah. Understood.
So I'm hoping, I mean, I know it's selfish of me, but I mean, I want the best for Weird Al, but I'm also hoping that after a show or two, he goes like, "Where's Denny? Why isn't Denny here?"
Right.
because I don't know if it was his choice to do it without me or to not, but that's the kind of thing where, I want to work with somebody who is really concerned about their sound and who just loves me and trusts me to do it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
and somebody who has like real sound, like Prince didn't use tracks or anything. Like a real band, like I did Beck. Beck was just brilliant musicians. Like I love being with like real music, real artists who are really performing it.
Not interested in doing just that pop stuff where it's just a backing track and you're just hitting play on a recorder somewhere in the background.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get me wrong. I love pop stuff. Like, I think it'd be really cool to do like Selena Gomez shows or Katy Perry or something like that. But yeah, it's not as fun for me just if I'm not mixing. Like, it seems like with that stuff, the tracks are already pre-mixed so much that it doesn't seem like it would be as fun.
Okay.
I haven't done a lot of that. I've done a little bit of that, but it's not nearly as much of an accomplishment as when you get a whole band sounding good.
Yeah,
right.
And it, because on a good show, it sounds better than the record because of the dynamic range and because we can control the tonality, and it's exciting. And especially like with a band like Jimmy Eat World that I had worked with so long, I knew the songs so well that I could really mix it actively and have things come out that were just kind of mind-blowing to people in the audience. And that only happens after you've done a lot of shows with an artist and you really know the shows well. Every show I multi-track, and then the next day I play it back just for myself and basically can make tweaks in the mix. So I multi-track it as if it's the band playing, and the, like, for example, the snare drum mic comes down the snare drum channel. So I can just solo that up like you would in a recording studio and listen to how does the snare drum sound? How does that effect sound on the snare drum? And that's made mixing sound really interesting the last 10 years or so, having that technology to be able to do that.
Yeah. It makes it so much more you can do now, that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Makes it,
yeah. And having plugins, like I can polish it and develop things to a much higher level than it used to be. Kind of like, just throw it up and do your best and go. And now it's kind of like developing a mix over weeks and just, what's the weak link? Oh, that hi-hat sounds too aggressive. Sounds,
right.
I just take little notes during the show. And then the next day I could go back and attack just that problem.
Right.
Wow. So at really no point are you phoning it in at you really are, every day is a new challenge.
Yeah, I mean, you might get comfortable on a tour after, the 100th show or something, but even when you're comfortable with your mix, usually you're on a different sound system with different acoustics, and half the time the sound systems I'm on have a problem with it.
Right.
And so I spend a lot of time as a tech checking the wiring, adjusting the settings, possibly even bringing in different gear if needed to make a show as good as it could be.
It's an interesting profession. I don't know if I could do it. I mean, it's just so, like, it seems so chaotic. Like, even when you're on the job, flying by the seat of your pants, things real time, and then like the booking of the gigs and taking of the work also seems very chaotic. I don't know. That's oh man.
Yeah. It can be nerve-wracking, and especially with technology changing, it can be difficult because it's hard for me too as a musician. I've spent a lot of time lately working on songwriting, recording, and marketing, and planning 10-Foot Pole. I did a lot of the booking myself on the Canadian part of this tour, and it's very time-consuming. And but in the audio world, equipment's changing all the time.
Right. So
every time I get a new gig, especially if it's different types of gigs, like I have upcoming corporate shows where I might have to do playback and lav mics for executives or something. And with that, and also with all the IT stuff and wireless things, things are constantly changing. And so it's very competitive, and I need to kind of stay up to date with all the gear. And so it's very stressful. Like I go to gigs and just worry about, like, what if I get there and the networking is bad and my IT skills aren't up to par.
Then you call your kids for help, right?
Yeah. I mean, you guys are laughing like it couldn't happen, but I'll give you an example. In Belgium, at I don't know if it was the last time 10 Foot Pole played at Belgium, but on a time not too long ago, we were all set up and ready for sound check, and the sound guy just was working on something. He had some kind of problem. I thought, okay, he's missing a cable or something. Like he's got to go back to the shop, whatever. And like a couple hours passed, and finally, like we were getting time for the doors, and we hadn't made any sound out of the sound system. And finally, I approached him. I probably should have earlier. And he wasn't able to get the rack on stage that had all his mics plugged in to communicate with the mixing board.
Ooh.
And luckily for me, I jumped in and found it for him. It basically was a word clock issue. And, like I never want to be that guy.
Right.
I never want to be the one who's like holding up the whole show and possibly wrecking the show because there's some piece of gear that's not talking to another piece of gear correctly on a digital network.
Right. Then you'll be Denny Wordclock. You'll never work in this town again.
Yeah. But that stuff does happen. I see all kinds of different failures for different reasons. And so when I go to jobs, I'm always nervous that what if I'm the one causing the failure? And usually that nervousness helps me prepare more. And so I work extra hard. And so I do a great job. But you never know, failures do happen, and you never know what new piece of gear or what, what's going to be the downfall.
Yeah, that's true. So, well, Dennis, I mean, we've taken up a lot of your time.
Right.
We really appreciate you coming on our podcast and talking to us.
Yeah, I totally should have been studying IT solutions for sound gear during this time.
You know what? I want to listen to you talk. Like I said, I find it all interesting. If our listeners don't, that's their fucking problem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they won't, but I'm.
Well, you can always edit this later and get all the interesting stuff, and you have like 10 minutes of good stuff, and then 2 hours of me rambling on about IT networks and sound engineering.
Luckily, we have a huge nerd culture on our podcast. So they're going to love all of it.
Oh, great!
But I mean, so anyways, just to recap for our listeners, 10 Foot Pole's new album is Escalating Quickly. Comes out May 10th. Go to 10footpole.com for if you want to find a link to the Patreon, you want to pre-order the vinyl or the CD. I know if you want to listen to their back catalog, you can find 10 Foot Pole on Spotify and anywhere else good music is hosted. If you want to listen to their other stuff too, you can start with Setlist or listen to any of the albums. I mean, I love them all. I couldn't. What's your favorite album that you've done? You think people should listen to if it's not Setlist? Like, what were you telling people before Setlist to listen to?
Well, it's definitely Escalating Quickly. And if you like the songs you hear tonight, they're on Spotify, or also they're at our pre-sales. The Bandcamp pre-sale one has the 2 songs streaming, Don't Be a Dick and Everything Dies. And there's going to be another one in a few days called Forever Road too. So if you guys like these songs, they're available to listen to right now, and then the whole album becomes available May 10th. I can't say a favorite album, because that's why I made Setlist, was that I wanted Setlist to be my reference so that people could listen to it and hear kind of my favorite bits and pieces from each record.
Those are more your favorite songs, not like the audience favorite songs on Setlist. Those are the ones that, like, in your opinion, are the ones that you're the most proud of?
It's a mix.
Okay.
To be honest, I picked ones that I liked and ones that were the popular ones, but some of them were my choices, and there are a couple of songs that were more popular. Like you said, Racer X was more popular, but I didn't write the music on that, and so I just always thought it was kind of a simple, kind of boring song to me. And also, it's about baseball. There's quite a few songs about baseball. Like, even if I wrote the lyrics, sometimes I worked with our old singer and worked on them. And sometimes they were about baseball because that's where he came from. So sometimes we got together and said, hey, let's write a song and I'll help you with lyrics. But what do you want to write? What do you want to sing about? And there's at least 3 songs that are about baseball that people probably don't know.
That's awesome.
This is pretty funny.
Well,
hidden Easter eggs in there if you can find the baseball songs.
Well,
when it says I run, but I'm running in place. Da da da. Yeah, that's a baseball reference.
Oh, nice. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully all of our listeners will run out and pre-order the album and sign up for the Patreon. Is there?
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm excited to get these new songs out on the road, and hope that we can be out in Pennsylvania not too long, please check out 10footpole.com occasionally and check out tour dates. Or if you become $1 a month patron, one of the benefits is you get an email newsletter from us. So unlike on Facebook where I have to pay just to send tour dates to people who already said they like us, on Patreon for $1 a month, if you pay, I get to send email for free. So you're doing me a huge favor.
Nice. I will make sure the listeners know if you come anywhere close to the East Coast that they're aware of it. Don't worry. I'll tell everybody.
Oh, thank you. No, you need to create uncertainty where people are worried and then want to put down that $1 a month, and then I can try to repay the recording and be able to make more recordings soon.
Yeah, as you know from listening to this podcast, we're real lazy. So, Bobo's not going to do that.
I also have what you call revisionist history, where I forget things and I'll try to make it up later. Yeah. So you might want to just sign up for the page. That's probably a good idea.
That's a safe bet. But I try to make it worth people's while. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and hope everybody likes the songs, and feel free to write about it and give us positive reviews if you feel positive.
Yes, thank you. And we'll leave the listeners with one more song. What's the title of it?
Everybody Dies.
Everybody Dies.
No, it's Everything. Everything dies. Everybody
dies.
Everything you can imagine.
Nice. Well, here's
I was just trying to think of the most depressing lyric possible.
That's great.
All right.
You got to listen for the puppies line. You have to listen for the puppies. Just to put it over the top. This record was about having fun, which involved a lot of giggling in the studio. We'll put it at that. Nice. So thank you so much. The band's called 10 Foot Pole, and TEN, 10footpole.com.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Bobo. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
Thought that we would always stay together. Thought the whole notion of love would last forever.